So thank you everyone for joining us today on a Saturday. My name's Eloise Lecomte, and I'm a dietitian at the New South Wales Refugee Health Service. So today, Me has asked whether I could talk a little bit about healthy eating. Yeah. Sorry, Paul, would you like to say that?
No say.
No, say sorry.
Yeah.
I think no need to interpret, is it because everybody understand?
Yeah.
Everybody, I can't see anybody that I can interpret for them.
Yeah, I think we understand.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
you can carry on and everybody.
Sure.
So
Okay.
far, the people that are here, they are able to understand. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, please let me know if there's something that you need me to re-clarify.
Sure.
So today, Me's asked whether I could talk a little bit about healthy eating. I mentioned to Me that I work with children aged between 6 and 18. So today what I wanted to do was talk about healthy eating, I guess, for children within that kind of age group. I won't be touching on children between the age of 0 to 5 because that's not my specialty area. Okay. Please feel free to ask questions throughout, and we'll get started. So first of all, I guess I wanted to start by maybe asking what your view of healthy eating is, or what you believe healthy eating to be.
And sorry. Do you want me to start with me first?
No.
What my experience is, the time is very important for me for healthy eating. Is it correct?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Time. Like we need to have a time. What time need to eat breakfast? What time is the lunch? What time? That is very important for healthy.
Yes.
Healthy eating.
Routine's really, really important, and particularly for kids. That's exactly right. Often, what we might see if kids don't have a set breakfast time, lunchtime, dinner time, then they might snack a lot.
Yeah.
And then they sort of fill up, and by the time a meal comes around, they're too full to eat the meal. So timing can be very important. Yeah. What's also important is the types of foods that we eat. So a lot of the Australian government has looked at a lot of research to find out what are the foods that are protective and important for good health. And what they found is that there's 5 types of foods, and we've grouped them into 5 categories that are really essential because they provide nutrients that our body requires, but they're also healthy. So I don't know if you can sort of see this pyramid on the screen, and that kind of outlines the 5 foods. So we've got vegetables, fruits, we've got grain foods, and grain foods are things like foods made from different grains like rice and wheat. So you might have bread, pasta, noodles, plain rice. And then we've got our protein foods. So that's things like in the right top side, you can see there's animal proteins. So that's I guess the animal meat and the fish meat. But you can also see that there's I guess vegetable protein. So things like nuts, also legumes. So things like kidney beans, chickpeas, lentils. And then also things like eggs. And then the final food group just next to that is the dairy. So that's things like our milk, yogurt, and cheese. So these 5 foods are really essential for good health for children and adults. Now, you can see in this pyramid some of the, I guess we might call them squares or areas, are bigger than others. So you can see the vegetable one is a bit bigger than, for example, the meat one. And that relates to the quantity that we should be having. So we need to be eating more vegetables than we do the meats. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we might do is just go through each of those foods and talk about the benefits of those foods and why they're important. So if we start off with vegetables to begin with, vegetables, does anyone know, I guess, why vegetables are important for our health?
Maybe you can explain.
Vegetable, less sugar. Less sugar.
Yeah, so yeah, there's very little sugar in them. Vegetables are very important for our health for a number of reasons. The first thing is they contain a lot of vitamins and minerals, okay? And our body needs vitamins and minerals to function. They also provide a lot of fibre. So fibre is very important. Fibre, it is good for our bowel health, okay? And it helps reduce things like constipation. So it keeps our bowels regular. Vegetables also provide lots of healthy antioxidants. And with vegetables, we want to make sure that we're having vegetables every day, and we want to have a variety of colours. So like a rainbow, because each colour contains different vitamins and minerals and different nutrients. So you can see on this beautiful picture maybe some of the vegetables that you might traditionally use in your cooking. I spoke to Me beforehand just to get an idea of some of the traditional vegetables. So things, you know, like morning glory, snake bean, squash, bamboo, cucumbers, mushrooms, eggplants, cabbage, okra, long melon, zucchini and broccoli are all very, very healthy. And there's many, many more vegetables as well. And you know, it's Me was mentioning that you use a lot of vegetables in your cooking, and that's really important. So with sort of the stir frying of the vegetables or in the curries. If we now move on to the next food group, oh, sorry, I'll just have on this slide. So, you know, fresh vegetables that we cook, or salad vegetables, or even frozen vegetables are all good options. Things like chips are not such good options. So if we move on to the next food group, that is our fruit. And so fruit, like vegetables, contains a lot of really important vitamins and minerals for our body to function well. It also contains lots of antioxidants. And like with vegetables, it's important that we have them every day and that we try and have a variety of colours. And again, like with the vegetables, the fruit contains fibre, which is good for our gut health and our bowel health. When it comes to fruit, it does contain sugar, So what we suggest is that we have more vegetables than we do fruit. And it's really important to, you know, eat the fruits that maybe are traditional to your culture where available. So things like, again, I spoke to Me and she mentioned things like papaya and mango, and even, I guess, some of the fruits that maybe more available in Australia, like apples and pears and oranges. They're all really healthy. And with kids, you know, we can prepare them in ways that maybe make them a little bit more exciting. So making a fruit salad, you know, slicing the melon and allowing them to eat the slices of melon. And so, yeah, fruit's a really important part of our diet. When it comes to fruit, we also suggest that people eat the whole fruit rather than the fruit juice, because when we make a fruit juice, we often throw out the pulp, and the pulp is the fibre, the bit that's really good for our gut. Okay, so we recommend eating the whole fruit and not the juice. Does anyone have any questions so far?
That's for the general age, right? Are you talking about for the kids or for the adult or?
Yeah, so this is for kids and for adults. So this is just general sort of healthy eating.
But those who born in Australia, you know, they are prefer junk food, you know.
Yes,
A lot
yes.
of our teenagers, they might like, you know, our traditional food or veggie, but the kids are having the trouble with, you know, eating our traditional food or veggie.
Mm. Yeah, and that can be really challenging, especially when there's so much availability of those sorts of foods. And one thing that I guess you know that parents have the ability to do is to, where possible, maybe not to purchase those foods so that they're not available in the home. So if they're not available in the home, hopefully they won't be consuming them as much. I know that's more difficult with teenagers because if they have access to money, they can buy those sorts of foods. But where possible, trying not to bring those foods into the family home.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, true, true.
So again, you know, as I mentioned, sort of the fresh fruit is the best, or frozen fruit, or we can buy fruit that's in sort of a can. It's best to limit or avoid these sort of things like, I don't know if you can see on the slide, they're kind of sticky fruit snacks or dried fruit snacks. A lot of them have a lot of added sugar in them. And the sugar, I will talk about in a little while, can be quite detrimental to our teeth. So the next food group that I wanted to talk about was the grain food. So that's the third food group. So the grain foods, as I mentioned, that's things like foods that are made from wheat. So bread, we've got flour, which we make things with, spaghetti, and then we've got the rice grain, which we have, I guess, plain rice or rice noodles. Now, all those options are quite healthy, and they provide some important nutrients for our body. Now, they provide something called carbohydrates, and carbohydrates, these are very important for our body because they provide energy. So they provide energy for our body to move. They provide energy for our brain. These foods also provide fibre for our gut and some more vitamins and minerals. And again, we need to be having these foods every day. There are foods that aren't as healthy that contain grains, and they're often things where we've added additional sugar or added additional fats. So it might be things like we've made a cake with the flour, but then you've added sugar and butter to make the cake, or donuts where you've done that and then deep fried. Some things like muesli bars, sweet biscuits, and those sorts of foods. Again, the sugar can be detrimental to our teeth. So if we move on to the fourth food group, this food group, as I mentioned at the beginning, it contains our animal meats, it contains eggs, it also contains our vegetable proteins, so things like legumes, so lentils, chickpeas, and nuts and seeds. Now, these foods, they're important for children. Protein, because they provide a source of protein. And protein, all our cells are made of protein. So as a child is growing, their body is growing, they're making more cells, they need protein from food to grow. But also as an adult, we need protein to repair our cells. And also we need protein for the body functions. These foods also provide, and mainly the animal meats, provide a good source of something called iron. So iron is very important for our body. Iron helps carry oxygen around the body, and we can find good sources of iron in animal meats, and the redder the meat, the higher the level of iron. So for example, with the chicken, that is more of a white meat, and the beef is more of a red meat. So the beef will contain more iron than the chicken, but the chicken still contains iron. The other important nutrient we find in these foods is zinc, and zinc is good for our immune system. Okay, so these foods are healthy, and we should have them every day, but we don't need large portions, okay? And when we prepare these foods, it's very important that we cut any fat off the meats. So the fat on the animal meat is a type of fat that we call saturated fat. And this saturated fat can increase our cholesterol, which then can impact our health and increase our risk of things like heart attack and stroke. So it's really important we cut the fat off any meat before we prepare it and before we eat it. The only animal fat that is good for our health is the fat on the fish. Okay, so some animal products, it's quite tricky to remove the fat. So things like sausages, hamburgers. So these foods we suggest that we limit. So only have small amounts, or we avoid. The final food group that I want to talk about today is dairy. So dairy, like the other food groups, we should be having every day. And dairy is important because it contains calcium, and calcium is really important for our bone health. So calcium helps to keep our bones strong, and these dairy products also provide protein. So when we talk about dairy, there are some healthy options, and they are milk, yogurt, and low-fat cheeses. And so these are foods that we would recommend that you have every day. And then there's some dairy foods that we suggest that we limit because they have a lot of additional sugar. So things like ice creams and dairy desserts, so like custard, mousse, these sorts of foods. So that's the 5 food groups. And again, these are foods that we should be consuming every day because they provide a lot of important nutrients for our health. Does anyone have any questions about those 5 food groups?
Is in the vegetable, in the fiber, do they have a lot of acid in it? The vegetable, do they contain a lot of acid or?
I'm not entirely sure. I guess it might depend on the vegetable, the level of acidity.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess things like citrus, so maybe a lime could be quite acidic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is there a reason?
I was asking because my sister said she wanted to lose weight, so she had salad every night without any carbohydrate, just salad, and then she started to get this heartburn, like yeah.
Okay.
And the doctor tell her that she has because of too much veggie, that's why she has like the veggie contains acid. Yeah,
that's unusual. I guess I don't really want to touch on weight loss today, so I probably won't respond to that. But I will say that it is, when it comes to weight loss, it's important to still eat healthily, so not to avoid carbohydrates. So a meal, it's really important when we have a meal that it contains vegetables, that it also contains carbohydrates, so bread or rice or noodles, and that it contains some protein. So things like animal meats or eggs or lentils, chickpeas or dairy, okay? Because as we've just mentioned, all of these 5 food groups contain really important nutrients for our health. So we need to make sure that we are looking after our health, even if we're needing to lose weight. Does that make sense?
Yes.
thank you.
That's okay. So sorry, I had one more slide around the food group. So on the, I think it should show up on your left-hand side, you can see these are fatty meats. So they're the meats that we really should be avoiding and trying to have meats that are have the fat removed, so that white sort of fatty, yeah. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, I guess when we're cooking our food or preparing our food, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's looking after our health as well. So one thing that we need to be mindful of is salt and MSG. We know that salt can increase the blood pressure, and when we have high blood pressure, that can increase our risk of things like heart attacks and strokes. So we want to, when we cook, reduce the amount of salt and reduce the amount of MSG that we're using. And to make sure that our food still tastes really flavoursome, you know, we can maybe increase some of the spices. So things like the chili or the turmeric, ginger, cardamom, tamarind, lime juice and garlic, so that these kind of give us beautiful flavours, but we're protecting our health because we're reducing the salt and MSG. So
people coming from Asia, they used to put MSG while they're cooking.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear that. When they put the MSG.
I mean, people coming from Asia, they normally put MSG in their curry, you know.
Yeah, and that's I think me mentioned.
How about chicken powder? Is there a lot of MSG there?
So chicken powder definitely has salt, and then it depends on the brand. Some brands will have MSG, some brands won't. But what I would suggest is, if we're currently using salt and MSG, our taste buds get used to the flavour, and it can take, if we just suddenly remove it, maybe the food is going to taste bland. So what I would suggest is to slowly reduce it, and our taste buds actually are quite good at adjusting to it. So if we slowly reduce the salt and the MSG in our cooking, over time, our taste buds should adjust. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And then for your information, Korean people, they are having fish paste,
Yes.
which is salty, and
Yes.
then you know, without fish paste, you know, sometimes they can't eat, you know. So
Yes.
they normally eat fish paste, the salty one, almost every day.
Yeah. And that's something that I know Me had mentioned to me as well, the use of fish paste. Again, I guess it's trying to be maybe mindful of the quantity that you consume.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe looking at, is the fish paste made at home, or is it bought from the store?
From the Thailand.
From Thailand. Okay, so you can't change the salt quantity in it.
Yeah, if we can change it, make it, put it more water when we boil it.
Okay. That might be a strategy that you could do, is put more water in it, so then you use less of the fish paste.
Mm-hmm.
But also looking at other areas of the cooking and the food where you can reduce the salt. So maybe when you cook the curry, reducing the salt, reduce the MSG.
Excuse me. When you say salt, does it include all the, like, you know, the soy sauce and the fish sauce and stuff?
Yeah, it does. So again, the fish sauces and the soya sauces, a lot of sauces will contain salt.
Yeah.
Some sauces you can purchase a reduced salt variety.
Okay.
But sometimes that can be difficult to find.
Mm.
The reduced salt variety will still contain salt, but it will have less.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it might be maybe using less and adding a bit of water.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then, as you said, the taste will be like bland. Like tongue is someone's like used to those kind of like a heavy, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So Again, I don't know whether if you reduce it slowly, it
Mhm.
might be more helpful because our taste bud will get used to less salt.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we do it suddenly, then it will probably taste quite bland. But maybe as we reduce, then we can increase some of the spices,
Yeah.
maybe more garlic, more lime, more ginger, turmeric, these sorts of things that we add the flavour while we're reducing the sauces and the salt.
Okay.
The other thing, and I haven't put a slide up on here, but the other thing Mee mentioned to me is that often with the cooking of the curries, there can be a lot of oil and fats. Is that right?
Yeah, from like if it's traditional, not
Yeah.
traditional, like from Burma, they use a lot of oil. Yes.
So
Oil, yes.
that's maybe something that we need to be mindful of as well, that we're not using too much fats. Can I ask what sort of fats you use in the curry?
For me, I use vegetable oil or rice bran oil.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Not,
And that's that I guess is an important point because we know that when it comes to fat, when we're consuming fats,
yeah.
it's important where possible that we I guess avoid the animal fats.
Okay.
But the vegetable fats, they are fine, but just in small quantities. Yes, the rice bran, the vegetable oil, olive oil, these oils are fine, but we only need small amounts. And trying to not use the animal fats because they're the fats that are damaging to our health because they increase our cholesterol.
Okay.
So I want to talk a little bit about snack foods here. So I've got a few slides just so that you can see the different sort of snack foods. Sorry, I should leave them a little bit longer for you. I'm sure some of these look a bit familiar.
Very.
And some of the fast foods as well. So things like KFC, Pizza Hut, Domino's, McDonald's. So these sorts of foods, I guess, first of all, we can see that they don't belong to any of the 5 food groups. And which means that they don't provide any of those vitamins and minerals and really important nutrients that those 5 food groups provide. So we really want to limit these foods as much as possible for our children and for us. And like I said, firstly, they don't provide the nutrients. Second of all, sometimes our kids, when they snack on these foods, they then don't have the appetite to eat the healthy foods. So then they're not getting enough of the healthy foods. Does that happen?
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, it happens.
And then the other thing about these foods is they contain some things that are harmful for our health. So you might see that a lot of these foods contain sugar. And sugar, we know, can damage our teeth. So it can cause dental caries. The other thing that these foods contain is often a lot of salt. And as we mentioned, the salt is not good for our blood pressure. And then lastly, a lot of these foods contain the animal fats. So we can see like the fatty meats, we can see like biscuits and cakes which have butter in them, so they have the animal fat again, the pastries, and a lot of processed foods which contain the animal fats. And remembering that these animal fats, they are not good for our health because they can increase our cholesterol, our bad cholesterol. Okay. Now, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about drinks. And this is, I guess, again, just sort of to remind you, today I'm talking about, I guess, healthy eating for school-age children, but also these apply to adults as well. So when we look at what we should drink, the best choices are water. So water keeps us hydrated, and also milk. Milk, as we discussed earlier, contains protein and calcium. So they're both important drinks. What I've done is written out some drinks that maybe are not as good for our health and drinks that we should try to limit. And the reason these drinks are not as good for our health is they contain a lot of sugar. So they are things like fruit juices, cordials. So I don't know if you've seen the cordials here, but it's like a syrup that we add water to. Soft drinks, so things like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Sprite, 7-Up. Sports drinks, so that's like Gatorade, you can sort of see on here. And then the energy drinks, so things like Red Bull, Mother, these sorts of drinks. Also things like the iced teas. Yeah, and we can see that this can have really detrimental effects on our teeth. And I've seen many kids come through our clinic with poor dental health. And also it can contribute to weight gain. The other thing is if kids are having a lot of these drinks between meals, then sometimes they're not hungry at the main meal. Okay. So I guess, as I mentioned sort of just before, a lot of these sort of snack foods or unhealthy foods and drinks, they replace healthier foods in the diet, which means that we're not getting enough of those healthy foods. They also don't have all the vitamins and minerals and fibre that the healthy foods have in them. And also they can be detrimental to our health. Okay, so does anyone have any questions before I move on?
Sorry, it's again with the vegetable, is it better to have fresh veggie or like boil?
So with vegetables, it's the way we prepare it can change the nutrients. So what is recommended is either fresh vegetables or frozen vegetables or canned vegetables. They're all fine. But when we cook it, if we boil the vegetables, some of the vitamins leach or come out of the vegetables into the water, and so we can lose some of the some of the vitamins and minerals because they stay in the water. So it's where possible, it's best not to boil the vegetables. Steaming is perfect. Using them in curries is perfect. Baking them, stir fry, all these sorts of ways is absolutely fine. But it's preferable not to boil. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to talk about now is healthy lunch boxes. So how to prepare a lunch box for our kids when they go to school. So when we send our kids to school, they're often at school for quite a long period of time. And so we want to make sure that we use that time to be able to provide them with good, healthy nutrients. But also we need to acknowledge that they are at school and for a long period, and they are learning, so they need nutrients so that their body and brain can concentrate, so that they can learn well, and so that they have energy. Okay. So what we suggest is that when we pack a school lunch for our kids, that we make sure that we put something from each of the 5 food groups in the lunchbox. And sometimes it can be good to get the kids involved and get them to help prepare the lunchbox. So what we would do is we'd make sure that we've put, I guess, some source of vegetable in the lunchbox. We'd make sure we've put some source of fruit, some source of grain, some source of protein food, and some source of dairy. And we can mix it up so that there's variety each day. We can make it so that if our child is happy to take traditional foods to school, that it's traditional, or if they're wanting to take more Western foods, then we can change it so it's more Western. But it's really important that we try to put something from each of the 5 food groups. So I'm going to give an example of maybe a Western lunchbox that we'd pack, and then maybe, I'm not sure if one of you wanted to maybe go through and provide an example of maybe a traditional lunchbox that we could pack. So if we look at this pyramid, I might pack in the kids' lunchbox a sandwich. So I'd use some bread, which is from the grains. Then in there, I'm going to put some vegetables. So I might put a little bit of lettuce and tomato. And then I'm also going to put on that sandwich some protein. So I might put a little bit of tuna. And so I've got a tuna and salad sandwich. Then I might give them a little milk drink to take with them. And I'm going to put in there some fruit. So I might chop up some apple. And then I'm going to make sure that I put some water in there as well for them to drink. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So we can tick off that we've put something from each of the 5 food groups so that we're providing them with lots of good nutrients for their body, but also so that they can concentrate at school and have energy.
Yeah.
Would someone like to share maybe what a traditional lunchbox might look like if we prepared it with Karen foods?
Nasi. Please, Nasi.
For my knowledge is like morning 8 o'clock or around 8:10. I give my daughter very heavy breakfast. So I give her rice and like sometimes whatever I cook, chicken, fish, like beef, or sometimes early morning I fry egg and sometimes ham, all this thing. And lunchtime, sometimes if she want to bring rice and chicken, I let her bring. But the thing is, the school sometimes they don't have this type of maybe knowledge or what. So like sometimes they think that, oh, this is not the right food for her. But I encourage my daughter that don't worry, because of maybe some teacher they don't know about what is our Asian food or whatever. So yeah. But now she high school, I change. Morning, I give her heavy breakfast. As I said, we eat rice and food. So 1 piece of bread and fruit, 3 different type of fruit and water. And sometimes she like to bring popcorn. Sometimes she like to bring a small packet of cheese. So I try to control her food. So I give her. And then she come back, then I give her another heavy, a little before dinner, I give her another light
Okay.
food.
So I wonder whether, when you mentioned what she takes to school, so this, using this pyramid, is there a lunch that you might prepare for her to take to school so that she's getting something from each of these 5 food groups?
Do you mean in the pyramid?
Yeah, yes.
I give her bread and pear and apple and rock melon and some grapes.
Yeah.
And because sometimes she like green mango salad. So I prepare for her, I make for her, and I ask her to bring to school. So she's enjoying.
Okay. So that's great. So she's getting some fruit and she's getting the bread, which is the grain. But I can see that it looks like she's missing some vegetable, some dairy, and some of the protein. So,
The one is after she came back from school.
okay.
Yeah, because when she in school, she forget to eat. She's not interested to eat, so I don't bother too much in the school side. And then come home, I give her. She still eat, drink milk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to add, like, if it's like traditional when you add with this, for us maybe the best thing is just fried rice, but add with like egg and then vegetable like peas or carrots and or even like green veggie.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That's all we can do as traditional food, like with us.
Okay.
For me,
yeah, that sounds great. So I guess it can be challenging because kids sometimes they get distracted at school, and maybe their focus on eating isn't so great, but we need to remember that they're there for maybe 6 or 7 hours, so it's a long time. So we want to make sure that we're providing them with something from each food group to give them lots of nutrients. So that was a great, thank you both of you for sharing, and that was a great example of, I guess, with the fried rice, how we could try and get as many of the food groups in. So we've got the rice, which is grains. We've put some vegetables in there. So and then we've put some egg in there. So we've got 3 of the food groups. Then we might give them a piece of fruit and maybe a milk drink or a yogurt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. How about sometimes I try to make like a sushi, like just raw with the vegetable, and is that count with the?
Sorry, a vegetable sushi?
Yeah, or sometimes like a chicken? Or...
Yep, that's fine. Yeah, so again with the sushi, say for example it's a chicken one, you might put, you've got the rice, so the grain, you then maybe put some cucumber in there, some vegetable, you put some chicken, so you've got the meat.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then maybe you would give her some cheese as a snack and some fruit. If we're putting too much fruit in the lunchbox, then maybe there's not enough room for all the other foods. So we, 1 or maybe 2 pieces of fruit is enough.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make sense? So 1 or 2 fruit, but making sure that we're getting some vegetables, some grains, some dairy, and some protein in there as well. Does anyone else have any questions about the lunchbox?
I don't have questions, but I think it will be a good idea if we put the pyramid there in the kitchen, and like when preparing food, we just look at which one,
That's
be
a
a good idea.
fabulous idea. That's a very good idea. And, you know, we could even, if we get our kids to prepare them with us, we could make a game with it. So make it fun, you know. Can they tick off that they've put a vegetable in? Can they tick off that they've put a piece of fruit? You know, where is the grain in the lunchbox? Where is the dairy and where is the protein? And I can definitely send something like this to me, so she can send it around to everyone.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now with the lunchbox, so that's just an example. Again, this is a Western one. So we've got the bread, which is the sandwich, and in there maybe there's some tuna fish and some lettuce, and then we've got 1 or 2 pieces of fruit, a yogurt, and then some carrot sticks, the vegetable, and some water to drink.
Are you recommend sticky rice as a breakfast?
So sticky rice, do you add sugar to that?
No, because we Korean people like sticky rice, you know, with coconut and sesame seed,
Yeah.
or with dry fish.
Yep, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so these sorts of snack foods, like what we discussed before, that it's best that we don't put them in the lunchbox. And that's because, again, one, if we put them in the lunchbox, they're probably going to eat those first and fill up on them and not eat the healthier options. But also, we know these foods can be bad for our health and our kids' health. So the last thing I wanted to talk about today was just, I guess, some healthy mealtime principles. And I'm happy to discuss these and get your opinions on them. Okay. Before I do, does anyone have any questions about the lunch boxes?
No.
No? Okay. If you have any questions that you think of later, you can always ask me and she can contact me. So when it comes to healthy meal times, there's a few things that can be really important. One of them is to be a positive role model for our children. So when we eat, it's recommended that we eat with the whole family together. And I'm sure traditionally, I think that's what occurs. Unfortunately, in Australia, I think some families can eat individually, but it's really important to eat as a family. And there's many benefits of that. But one of them is that if children see their parents eating the vegetables and the healthy foods, then they are more likely to eat those foods as well. The other thing that can be really helpful to encourage your children to eat healthy is to talk positively about healthy foods. So, for example, when you're eating the stir-fried vegetables, talk about, you know, how tasty it is, or the texture, or if you eat a crunchy carrot, talk about, you know, it's orange, it's sweet, it's crunchy. So talk about it in a positive way. And by talking in a positive way about these foods, the children are more likely to eat these healthy foods. As I think someone mentioned at the beginning, that it's really important to have regular meal times. So we have breakfast, we have lunch, and we have dinner. And we can have snacks between them, but it's important with kids that they have these regular meals so they're able to get enough of these healthy foods at these meal times. And it's important to try to make sure that they don't snack constantly between the meals. Otherwise, they can end up not being hungry at the meal time. Another point that's important is when we're eating meals, it's really important to try and avoid distractions. So in a lot of families, particularly, I guess, Australian families, they might have the television on, the kids might be on the iPad or the phone, and they can be quite distracted while eating. And we really suggest that we turn all the distractions off so that the children can learn about the different flavours of the foods and the different tastes, and also to enjoy that family time. One thing that's important to remember as well is that when kids are trying new foods, the first time a child tries a new food, they might not like it because it's unfamiliar. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll never eat it. It's just that it can take time. And it's like with adults as well. When we do something for the first time that's new, we can be unsure, we can be nervous. And so we need to remember that when children try certain foods, they may feel the same way. So not to give up. So if a child doesn't like, for example, Morning Glory the first time, we don't say that they're never going to like it, but keep offering it to them without forcing them to eat it, but offering it to them in a calm environment, and over time they may start to like it. Obviously, everyone has their own foods preferences, so some foods people generally won't like the flavours of. It's really important as well not to force our children to eat certain foods as well. And then lastly, a way to help encourage our children to eat healthy foods is to involve them in the process. So I would encourage, if you're growing any fruit and vegetables or herbs at home, to maybe get the kids involved with the gardening and maybe allow them to look after one plant, and that's their plant. They might help out with the grocery shopping when you go buy the vegetables and fruits. And maybe when you go with them, you tell them the names of the different fruits and vegetables, and maybe allow them to choose one that they want to try with the family. Other things that can help are allowing where safe for them to help with preparing the food. And lastly, and sharing the recipes with them so that they're involved in the process. So these are just, I guess, some things that can help with, I guess, when we have kids. As I mentioned, this is aimed at school-age children, so primary age children and high school children. These sorts of principles can, I guess, help them to eat more of the healthy foods with the family. Did anyone have any questions about that?
I have a question, with the healthy food, like with the 5 types of food, is that okay, like if they have 2 in the morning and then 2 in the lunchtime and 1 in the afternoon, or do they have to have like each 5 types for all the meals?
Okay. Yeah, they don't have to have 5 types at every meal, but we need to have those foods every day. The amount depends on the age of the person and whether they're female or male. I guess there's a couple of things that I would suggest. The first thing is, like I mentioned, with the school lunch, I would try to get one of each of the 5 food groups plus water. The other thing is, at the other main meals, I would try to get either fruit or vegetables plus the grain food plus the meat or legumes, so those protein foods, or the dairy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So 3, sorry, it's a bit hard. I didn't put a slide together with that, but we want to try and get 3 of those things at each meal.
Yeah.
The main meal. So just to repeat again, fruit or vegetables plus the grain food, so maybe rice, bread, these sorts of things, plus either the animal meats, the eggs, the legumes, so lentils, things like that, or the dairy. Yeah.
And when you say like in the lunchbox, I didn't see because they have crunch and sip.
Crunch and sip, yeah.
Yeah. So is that the crackers, like rice crackers, but the flavor one day, like cheese. Is that healthy enough for them to take to school? Because they.
Unfortunately, so that would fall into these sorts of food here. So
yeah.
no,
Mm.
the crackers with the cheese, unfortunately, they're not a healthy option. So the crunch and sip, as far as I'm aware, I think that is a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
They're supposed to crunch. So when they crunch on it, it makes a crunch. So for crunch and sip, they need to bring a piece of fruit to school, and then the sip is the drinking of the water.
So it just, because my daughter would be like, no, the fruit is not enough, something more crunch, like rice crackers, or even chips,
So the plain rice crackers are fine. So I don't have an image of it, but the plain rice crackers are fine, and maybe they could bring some cheese, so maybe some sliced cheese to put on the crackers, and then that way, if we go back to the pyramid, can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay, so then I'll use that to point out. So if we put the crackers in there, that would come into the grains, but just the plain crackers. Then we put maybe some sliced cheese, so that's the dairy. Then we put the fruit for the crunch and sip.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll put some vegetables. So again, it might be sliced. It could be sliced cucumber, maybe some cherry tomatoes, and then some protein. And again, it's a bit tricky sometimes, protein on its own, so you might want to put it in some bread. So maybe some mashed egg in a sandwich, or
just my question, are you allowed to bring egg product at school?
So that's something that you'll need to check with your school. Some children have allergies to eggs. So if there is an egg allergy in the school, then you won't be allowed to bring eggs.
We're not allowed. Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Okay. So, if you can't bring eggs, you could put fish, maybe tuna in the sandwich, or you could put a little bit of chicken or a little bit of meat.
But the ham and stuff is not good, isn't it? Ham and this chicken slice that they purchase.
Preferably the fresh chicken is healthier. The problem with the processed like ham and processed chicken is there's a lot of salt added to it. Whereas the fresh chicken, so if you cooked your own chicken, that salt's not in there.
Just be careful not to have the fresh chicken on the hot days.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Gary, for mentioning that to me. Sorry, that was something I meant to mention and then I forgot. Yeah, I guess one thing we need to be careful of is making sure that the food stays cold at school, because otherwise bacteria can grow in the food. So a couple of things that we can do to help keep the food cold is we can buy, I don't think I've got an image of it, but I might send it to me. We can buy like a little pack to put our lunch boxes in.
Yeah.
It's like a little insulated pack. We can also put like an ice, you can buy special ice packs that you put in the freezer at night, and then in the morning when you pack the lunchbox, you put it in the freezer. You put it in the lunchbox. And then it's probably
a box of frozen water, little
Yes.
bottle of frozen water, and they can drink it at afternoon,
Yes.
or they can put it back in the fridge, fill it up.
Perfect. Yes. And then lastly, it's probably best because kids don't, I imagine, think about these sorts of things. So it's probably best also just to mention to the kids, maybe try and make sure that they put their school bag somewhere that's in the shade, because often it can get very hot at school, and if they just throw their bag on the ground, which I'm sure I remember when I was at school, you just put your bag on the ground and go, it can get quite hot. So making sure you tell the kids to put their lunchbox somewhere cold or shaded. One food that we need to be very careful with as well is rice. So rice, bacteria can grow in rice very quickly. So if we do give rice to our kids to take to school, it's important that we make sure we, again, put that cold ice pack block in the lunchbox, and we have an insulated lunchbox, and ask the kids to put it in the shade. Yeah.
But then isn't it the rice gonna go cold? Like, if the rice colder, we don't like rice like cold rice.
Yeah.
I would normally put in like a thermal cup or something like that. Is that still good?
Keep it warm.
The problem is that bacteria can grow. So bacteria grows when foods are warm, or I might have to actually get back to me about this because I don't have the exact temperatures. If you give me a minute, I might actually just quickly look that up. But there's a temperature range in which bacteria grow. And because of that, we have to keep the food either very cold or very hot. And unfortunately at school, we can't keep it very hot. So we need to keep it cold. Let me just check the temperature.
I think 5 to 60 is the danger zone. So
yes, it's something like that. Yeah.
And they don't have heater, no, microwave at school, yeah?
No.
Like kids,
no.
can you?
I don't think so. Yeah, that's exactly right. Sorry. Was that me that said 5 to 60?
No, that's me.
Pomila say that, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Pomela. Yeah, so basically when food is above 5 degrees and below 60 degrees, then bacteria can grow.
Yeah.
So warm food definitely is in that temperature zone, which means bacteria will grow in it. So really, as mentioned, it's impossible to keep it above 60 degrees while they're at school. So the only option is to keep it below 5 degrees. So by putting the ice pack in there, using an insulated lunchbox and asking the kids to put their lunchbox in the shade. Yeah.
But then if we eat does our body used to it and then we got more immune to that kind of like a temperature?
Not that I'm aware of.
Mm.
No.
Mm. This makes sense.
Yes, for me, because of that, lunchtime, I don't want to give my daughter about that kind of food that need to worry about bacteria. That's why, as I mentioned just now, morning I give her heavy
Okay.
breakfast. Yeah,
Yeah.
give her rice, give
Yeah.
her chicken, or give her, and lunchtime I give her a light meal, like a one bread.
Yeah.
So
So
I
I
don't need to
guess
worry too much. And I
what
come
we-
home. Yeah, come home. I give her. I pump her with that hot, whether cold or whether yogurt or milk. That's why if I know if I put lunchbox all these things, then in the school we will have this trouble.
So one option, I guess, if we are concerned about the temperature zone, we can still, I'll point out some options. Okay, so the vegetable should be fine. The fruit should be fine. With the grain, rather than using rice, we can use bread. So that should be fine. When it comes to the dairy, we can actually buy little long life milk poppers.
Mm.
So that's fine. And then when it comes to the protein foods, we can buy things like, you can buy the can of tuna, or you can buy little cans with the chicken in it. So they're all, I guess, foods that don't need you, I guess they're safer foods when it comes to temperatures. I would still obviously suggest that the kids put an ice block in their lunchbox with an insulated lunchbox, and also put it in the shade. So that's, I guess, all I wanted to cover today, because I didn't want to overwhelm you with too much information.